Invocation from Reverend Sandy Spalding. Please stand.
God, our divine spirit, we ask you to shine your light down upon us this evening, granting our council the ability and the wisdom to make the proper decisions for our city and our residents. We ask that we all work together. We ask that we become one unit in one city. For this we are thankful. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tammy, would you call roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Dale Masad,
Here.
Vice Mayor Bill Colombo.
Here.
Councilman Steve O'Neill.
Here.
Councilwoman Nancy Britton. Here. Councilman Terrence Rowe.
Here.
City Attorney Joseph Public.
Here.
City Manager Tom O'Neill.
Here.
Okay, announcements. Staff.
Council minutes. Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the council meeting. Anybody, do I have a motion to approve the meeting or any changes to the minutes?
The minutes. Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, announcements from the staff. Or from the-
I have none at this time.
I have nothing either, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, general public, do I have a?
Yes, sir.
Jeffrey Malloy.
Jerry Malloy, 8150 Brent Street, San Pedal. I'm here to invite you. I think most of you know who I am. If my partner was here, you'd probably know him better, me as Mr. Cellophane. But Artie's so big that you all would know Artie. Anyhow, we're having a Veterans Day Memorial tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I don't know if you all got the word. I heard that maybe you did, maybe you didn't, so I said, I'm coming tonight to just tell you. We're inviting everybody to come up, and it's at 11 o'clock a.m. And we're having, Olive Garden has nicely given us lunch. So right after the ceremony, we'll have lunch in the clubhouse. So
And that-
anybody who can come.
Where,
you're
where
welcome.
was it, Jerry?
It's at the clubhouse in San Pebble.
Okay.
And lunch is after it, and that's really it. Just
Thank you
making
very
sure that
much.
you know about it. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding me. Mr. Roth. Carl.
Carl Roth, 8031 Island Drive, Port Richey, Florida. I'm up here tonight associated with the Port Authority Board. We had an opening with Mayor Massad's resignation on the board. And over the last few weeks, we've been looking for other people that had interest in the position, experience in various areas. And we solicited various people in the community on who might be interested. And Ron Padova has offered his experience in coming on board with the Port Authority Board. He's got previous experience on the Port Authority Board, planning and zoning. He's a business owner in Pasco County. His residence is actually right on the river. And the Bayou Business Association suggested him as a person as well. And over the years that I've been on the board, Ron has been very helpful in providing information and comments about the river that we could discuss at times. So I think he would be a good candidate to consider as far as appointing to the Port Authority Board.
Okay. Council, since we finished this last meeting, I would say let's go ahead and vote on that.
Well, we already did vote on that
We didn't vote
last
on
time.
No, we.
Well, we voted on Michael Winton, and there's only 3 seats, and there's only 1 open seat, so there are no open seats.
Oh, you're correct.
Yes, sir.
That's correct, sir.
Yeah, we did.
I apologize. That is correct. Michael Winton had already been,
Nominated and voted on, yeah.
I didn't disseminate that, I guess. Okay, so be it. Michael Winton had already been voted on. Carl, I guess it didn't get disseminated. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
More from the-
just briefly, I would say that boards and committees was on the agenda in the last meeting. The boards and committees
It was.
was on the agenda, and
I
that's
remember
why
now,
it
I
was.
had asked to go forward.
It's on this one as well.
Is there ever an alternate position in there that he could be appointed as an alternate?
Not on board.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Thomas Brown.
Thomas Brown, 7436 Candlelight Court. I have with me tonight the fourth form of proof that the lake that is today known as Lake Cox was naturally formed prior to 1967. The city manager is of the opinion that the lake did not exist prior to 1980. I have previously provided the city manager and all the council members an aerial photo of the lake from 1974, provided to me by the University of Florida. The fourth proof, which I have recently received from the Florida Department of Transportation Surveying and Mapping Office, is a 1967 aerial photo showing the body of water that today is known as Lake Cox, as it was 48 years ago. Thursday, I will send a copy of the 1967 aerial photo and a letter to the city manager and ask him once again if the lake was naturally formed and in existence prior to 1980. So far, I've received no response. Thank you.
Discussion. Ms. Thomas,
Yes,
have you ever given a written opinion, Mr. Brown?
Yes, I did. I believe it was back in July of last year, I believe a written opinion was given.
Did you get that, Mr. Brown?
Yes, the city attorney said the lake didn't show until 1990. That's what he said,
No.
in writing.
I would have to,
Can you send me one of those?
Sure.
I happened to speak to a physician recently that goes back 3 generations and told me that, it was never there.
Well, Mr. Mallett said it was. I don't know. Let's keep open minds. Let's see, we have anybody left? Okay. Consent agenda. Let's see, no, we better come, we got the comments from the council.
Nothing here? I do, you guys? Okay. Just a couple short things. As we continue the fight with blight, the demolition continues, that's a good thing. We've had a few over a course of time here. Recently, Pasco County posted the best tourism year ever, very promising. I'd encourage folks to stay up to date with the Pasco 360 newsletter. Tom, you indicated, based on performance indicator on the water, lower price negotiation was also taking place during that time, which accounted to X number of dollars as we look to produce our 65 to 70%, and also relate to bulk purchase from Newport Richey at that lower negotiated price. So I'm glad we continue to stay on top of that. As a matter of fact, that's probably something that may come up a little bit tonight as well. The Waterfront Park Pier note was very disappointed, but not surprised. As you all know, that was basically to be installed with a minimum of a 10-foot below the mud line. Come to find out, we didn't get what we paid for. Just another lesson learned and something that we is
So
provided.
What did you say about the 10 feet?
Should have been a minimum of a 10-foot below the mud line, and
What?
Pardon?
On what?
On the waterfront park pier, obviously being demolished, and you know, what information has come from that, certainly disappointing, and not surprised. You know, these are things when they go up, they have to be looked at constantly from, and you know, what's being provided for, you know, it isn't too much to ask these companies when they're, you know, doing these kind of installs, do it right. And here's a case where, as you know, all of us were looking at, what, another $180,000 to replace? Not a good idea. The last thing I had, the interlocal agreement. Tom, is there some timeline that we're looking at as we, again, looked at information regarding the Waterfront Park and the Restore Act and the Florida's Community Trust, which was a hot topic at the last meeting? This agreement ties in, and
I don't have any further information for you. It is being developed by the county attorney's office. It was already supposed to be done. I will let you know when I hear anything. I believe the city attorney, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I know he's called out there and tried to move the thing along.
Yeah, have not heard anything about the progress. We're supposed to have something for your consideration. The last I heard was the middle of next month.
okay.
But I haven't seen a copy of anything.
For the interlocal?
For the interlocal with the county regarding the Restore Act.
Is that absolutely necessary for us to accept the money?
Yes.
Yes. The money is gonna go to the county, and then how they're gonna divvy it up to the sub-recipients, which are the two cities that were receiving money out of this first batch, is through the interlocal.
Okay.
But as soon as I get a copy from the county attorney's office, I will advise council.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you.
You good, Nancy?
Ms. Martinez? Oops. Ms. Martinez, will you please stand up? I'd like you all to join me in congratulating Ms. Martinez, who will be getting married this Saturday. What's your new name gonna be?
Martinez? No, I think I'm gonna hyphenate, so it'll be Martinez Catswinkle.
Katzman
Catswinkle.
Oh, okay.
It's a challenge.
Congratulations, congratulations.
Thank you.
One more quick thing. On Thursday night, the City of Port Richey Police Department will be meeting in Alex's Restaurant. We've had some vehicle break-ins and whatnot on the east side, and I'm sure there have been some in some other areas also. So we're meeting with the police department. Years ago, we did a pretty significant sweep of the web, and I'm ready to rock and roll again.
What's the date for the record, ma'am, again?
Thursday, this coming Thursday, the 12th, 7 p.m., Alex's Restaurant.
You're going to have a neighborhood meeting.
Mr. Rowe?
Thursday at 7 o'clock.
Good, good. Okay, brings it back to me. I have a couple things. Steve, I guess this is for Mr. Public. Do we have the original contract for that pier?
To my knowledge, we don't. When this issue originally came up, I know it was quite some time ago. I don't know if it was a year ago, a year and a half ago. Staff had looked through the vault and was unable to locate the original or even copies. We have no documents relative to that build.
Was the engineering company Wade Trim?
I do not recall the details of any of the information that we did find.
When I looked what was in the file, which is very limited, I got the impression that Wade Trim initially was the engineer, and then their service agreement was terminated by the city, and someone else finished it up from an engineering perspective, but our file information is very limited, and so I can't give you a full answer on that.
Okay, do we know who, do we not? I guess we could assume, since we didn't get pilings down low enough, that the contractor didn't perform correctly, but we don't have a contract to go back on that.
Yeah, I have no idea what happened to the documents. It was some time ago, and before I started, so.
We went down that road when we discussed this, that, you know, why wasn't it done correctly? Where's the paperwork? And we couldn't get any of it. So.
Lovely, okay. Have a couple of other things to go along. It's no secret that Mr. O'Neill and I have butted heads on many occasions. And he had the character to stick out the olive branch. We had a meeting, and got along quite well, I thought. Mr. O'Neill told me that he was retired, and we kind of grabbed him out of his retirement, and he's probably planning on retiring in January. So I think I just want to thank him for having the character to reach out to me, and we will both be working together for the good of the city. And I thank you, sir. Thank you. Get us one picture.
Excuse me, could I comment on that? Mr. O'Neill, when did you decide you wanted to retire?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
When did you decide you wanted to retire?
Well, we've had some discussions on that, myself and the mayor, and other than that, you know, I don't have anything else to say on this at this time, publicly. You know, I will keep each of you informed as often as you want. And in the meantime, I'll continue to try and do the best I can.
So does this mean that we'll have Mr. Lupo come back, Dale? Is that what we're after here?
No, that's actually not Mrs. Britton.
Yeah, I see it coming.
But you're not as
Okay.
intuitive as Miss Spalding. Okay. Mr. Public,
Yes, sir.
you know, we asked for an opinion, which we got.
Yes, sir.
On the interlocal. Sort of seemed like a circular logic. And what is your opinion? I mean, what I read is they've never done it in the past.
They've never amended the restrictive covenants in the past. What the lady said when I spoke to her, that it is possible to amend the management plan, and that may be able to be done and meet some of the things that the city's looking to do. But they can't make any further comments until they review whatever the city plans on doing. She said, for example, the city may want to try and put 2 or 3 boat ramps in there, and they may say, no, you can do 1. So it's possible. She wouldn't say out and out that it wouldn't be approved, but until she actually looks at some document, some plan, she's not willing to make any further comments on it. I wasn't able to get a straight answer out of her either.
The Empire State Building can fly theory. If you put enough engines on it, you might can make it go.
She said we can amend the management plan.
But what is yours? I guess I could ask Mr. O'Neill as well. What is your idea of the time limits? Because we have only 68 days up.
I did ask her about that, and she was non-committal with that because she had said they used to have a staff of 17 people. They've been whittled down to 3. They would have to look at it. The Army Corps and several other hands would be in that pot as far as approving that management plan.
Okay.
So,
Tom, what do you think the cost is on trying to make a plan like that?
Well, I haven't solicited a proposal, as members of council are aware. I didn't want to spend any money on this until we had the Restore Act money locked up. I will consider that locked up once we have the interlocal agreement. The council will have a window of opportunity to either proceed or cease any activities with regard to relocation of the boat ramp. I'll get you that information. It's my understanding that once the interlocal is approved and the schedule is approved, we have 3 years to implement all of the projects. So we have plenty of time, in my mind, to do something, to get a submittal, to get it approved, or pull the plug on that part of it. And, you know, I would advise consideration of the interlocal agreement. You know, we will try and negotiate as much flexibility as we possibly can with it. in order that the council can consider it. So but we don't have it yet. So,
I'll share this with council. I did go to meet with a couple of the staff at the county building, and they will have no problem if we vote to take the money and simultaneously vote that we can't. We have to go with the deed and the restrictive covenants. And we can't put anything in that isn't in, but we can get the dredges and whatever else other than touching the park. So they seem very sure that could happen, and I guess we just have to time it. Would you all like to agenda that for the next meeting, or anyone?
Well, the single item before us right now is the interlocal agreement, either way, no matter what. What's not before us tonight, correct?
it's not before you tonight.
Right.
You will have that in front of you for your consideration.
Right.
Hopefully in the near future.
Right.
Will it be within the next 2 weeks?
No. I wish it was. I wish it was already done, but it's not. And we don't have any control because it's in the county attorney's office. So we first thought it was going to be done in August, September, but it's just not been completed yet by the county attorney's office. So as soon as it comes in, we can put it on an agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
Injecting a little levity, the culture of Port Richey requires rumors. And I was told that I've been drinking vodka, so everybody is willing. There's a shot for anybody that would like it. Let's go to the next. Thank you. Somebody laughs. I want to see you drink some, Sandy. Okay.
You know it's not vodka.
No vodka for you? Okay, we'll go to public hearing, Cody River.
Consent agenda.
Did I miss the consent?
You started it and then you kind of backed
I
up.
thought we had we had a vote.
Did minutes. No, consent agenda.
Okay, do you have a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we will move to item 1, no, 6. I should pull this out so I can read it again. We're on number 2, council business. Let's move to that. Mr. O'Neill?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, what you have in front of you tonight is material related to the first public hearing for the Cody River Planned Unit Development property. It's located east of Washington Street, generally between Broadway and I forget the name, excuse me, of the northernmost street. It's next to the Par Center. You have a memorandum of explanation and an ordinance rezoning this property on first reading. You will see it again on second reading at the next city council meeting. A representative from the developer is here, the engineering representative from Native Engineering. Also, Ms. Tammy Varana is here, the city's planning consultant. She has a brief presentation, and I'm sure you would like to hear from the engineering representative for the project. So with that, I'll you to them, and then it is a public hearing, and public comment would be appropriate after those individuals have a chance to present the information to you.
Is she going to speak at this point?
Yes, both of them would. The engineer is right there, and then Tammy Brana is in the back.
Good evening. My name is Tammy Vrana of Vrana Consulting, Safety Harbor. Let me just get my things organized here. We proposed, which include the Burke, the Isle, I guess it's the Roby, Cella or Cella. The planned unit development proposes zoning standards that are different from the existing R3 multifamily district. This is the zoning in the area. You have R1 and R2 to the west, commercial to the north, agricultural to the east, and R1 residential to the south. The standards include a request waste and utilities. There is available capacity for potable water, sanitary sewer, reclaimed water, and also solid waste disposal. For recreation open space, I can't do two things at once, obviously. Here we go. Recreation open space, the conditions of approval provide for one of two conditions. One is that there either be a minimum of 1 contiguous acre of developable uplands, providing for unobstructed play or a park, or the developer would provide some contribution in terms of land or money or some other improvements to an existing park, and that agreement, when stipulated, would need to be approved by the city council. Relative to neighborhood aesthetics, the conditions of approval require that there be an aesthetic treatment along Washington Street, that at minimum it would include fencing and landscaping, and when the details of that fencing and landscaping plan are available, that would also need to be approved by city council. We looked at consistency of the development with your comprehensive plan and found that it was consistent with the future land use element, specifically relating to the compatibility of adjacent uses. And these are the future land use categories surrounding the project. We looked at the housing element, which requires that developments provide for a sufficient supply and variety, and that there be attention to the attractiveness of not only the housing product, but also the neighborhood. And then finally, under the coastal and conservation management, there is a requirement that wetlands have a 30-foot buffer area around your Category 1 and Category 2 wetlands, and this development satisfies that. We also looked at the development in terms of your land development code, section 2.44, section B1, and there are 19 criteria, which we've looked at each one of those 19 criteria and found the development to be consistent, and that's elaborated on in the staff report that's provided. So with that, staff recommends approval of the planned unit development, subject to the conditions of approval in the ordinance, and finding that it's consistent with your comprehensive plan and your land development code. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question, please? How is this different, or is it any different than what we approved last year?
Should have mentioned that. It is identical. I think the one thing that was changed on the plan, there was a notation that the sidewalks would need to be lifted, and Josh can probably talk to this, at 4 inches. So I believe that before there was no detail provided for the sidewalks, and that's since been, so it's an enhancement.
Right, and this has also been approved unanimously by the P&Z board also.
Yes, it has.
Yes, okay.
Thank you for
Thank you.
pointing that out.
Just to clarify that, like Yogi Berra used to say, this is deja vu all over again.
Right, yeah.
As you remember, the council did see this. It unanimously approved this last November in first and second public hearing. There are no changes from what we.
The council would have the opportunity, or they would have to come to you, that detail would need to be presented, and you would have to agree to it. So rather than trying to describe it in the conditions of approval, it would actually be detail that you would be able to consider and approve.
Okay.
Nancy?
We also talked about changing an entranceway. Do you remember we discussed Washington Street?
Yeah.
And how we'd have to change the placement of the entrance and exits? I think we and I don't recall exactly.
No,
I don't.
As I recall, Nancy, it was a matter of concern about we'd already had a turnoff lane there, and was there enough stacking there?
Right.
And that what they were gonna do was have basically stacking beyond that.
Yes.
So beyond the three?
Well, beyond the three that exist now, beyond what exists now.
Well, the developer's engineer is here, ready to address any additional questions regarding engineering or the site plan.
May I first, before you leave, ma'am? What was the, excuse me,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember the, if there was.
Yeah, we had lengthy discussion of it. And before he comes up, may I, go ahead.
okay, this is a very simple question. I have no problem with your project. What was the reason for going from R3 to PUD?
Well, the R3 is the multifamily district, and they wanted to be able to put a single-family product there. And and maybe, let me let Josh answer that question, because it's his project, so.
And so they're decreasing the,
Okay, because I have a couple more questions.
density, and the PUD allows for a different setback.
Okay.
Can
I
I
thought
ask
it
the-
was probably setbacks, and I think is what's going
Oh, so are
to,
you-
doesn't
okay.
have no problem with it. You don't have to explain it.
Hi, Josh Bradley with Native Engineering. I'm at 15903 Leatherleaf Lane in Land O'Lakes. I don't know exactly what you're talking about the entrance. I know that we had to show that the stacking of the existing little turn lane on Washington would suffice along with stacking on site. And so we did that. I mean, Tom can tell you, we were 99% through with the full engineering plans before it expired, and it was a mistake on our part. So we had met all fire, utilities, storm, anything that you review in the city, we had met and gotten approved, besides, I think, some minor comments, and then it expired, so.
The other
I'm not
question-
sure exactly what, I was involved a year ago, and I don't remember. I know we talked about sidewalks. Right now, the sidewalks are very boxy, and we were gonna smooth the sidewalks out.
I just remember that there being a traffic issue, the amount of traffic on Washington, and how people were gonna be pulling off and whatnot, so. The other question I have is, reclaimed water was mentioned. Where's that coming from?
Well, we were asked to put it in. I don't know if it's going to be brought to the site yet. It'll be a dry line until it is supplied to the site.
Okay.
That would be part of the upcoming project and the
Right.
grant that we would receive from the Southwest Florida Water Management District.
Okay. The other question I have is, what are the price points of the properties?
Of the properties themselves, I don't know. I just do the engineering side of it.
So you don't know what you're gonna be selling these for?
I'm not selling them. I'm just the site engineer, engineering the site
Okay.
for each lot.
The other question I have is, the property's up for sale. You guys came in last time and said that you were gonna change this and that you were gonna start building. And that didn't happen. Next thing you know, I noticed that there's a for sale sign. What happened there?
Not sure why there's a for sale sign there, because everything's moving forward. Again, I don't
It's
own
been
the
there
land.
since, it's been there for a long time.
Right, I don't own the
Plus, the
land.
property's not always being maintained, so if you wanna go back and let them know that,
will
you
do
know,
that.
the neighbors complain about that, so if you would please ask them to kinda watch it.
Okay, yeah, as far as when we came here, like you said, the last time, we started designing and doing the engineering, and so we submitted in the spring, and we went back and forth with the city and with Swift Mud as well. And like you said, it timed out after 180 days. We didn't, it was our mistake on our end, didn't ask for the extension, so that's why
Okay.
we're back here. We want to be under construction right now, so.
To your knowledge, what type of homes are these? Are these affordable housing, is this a affordable housing project?
Well, they range from, I think, 1,400 square feet to around 2,200 square feet. So there are some, the lot sizes are more of the lower, not lower income, but they are affordable. Like you said, a lot of starter homes, first homes, but they do have, nicer, bigger products, and the land is beautiful, so.
Okay.
Just to clarify, the developer indicated to me that the pricing for the products that would be constructed on site would be in the high 100s to the low 200s. That would be the price range.
This will come up Thursday night, I can guarantee that. And the methadone clinic that's next door, do you know what their plans are? Because we had talked about the possibility of them looking into that methadone clinic and purchasing it for something.
I know he's tried several times, and it's still not under control. He's not giving up, though. If you know the developer, he doesn't give up. I know he did purchase another property to the north. It wasn't that corner piece, I believe, that you're talking about, but he did, I think he purchased another, I want to say 5 acres or 3 acres, but we're going to come in for that piece after this is approved.
At the corner of Pine Hill Road and Washington Street?
No, it's on the very north side of our project, kind of almost in that little catty corner, little cutout on the north side.
Is there a home there right now?
There, I don't believe there are. No. Either way,
That must be it.
that's what I do know that he has purchased. We had talked to Tom earlier about how, should we include it right now? We said, no, let's come back with the exact same PD and walk through the same steps. So that's what we're doing. So we didn't add any property to it as of right now, but he's fighting for it. He wants to.
So we also talked about, did we come to a conclusion last time about the park, where that would be, whether or not be on their property, whether or not be outside the property? I know we had a lengthy discussion about that. I'm just trying to remember all that.
Yeah, that was still to be brought to us. No decision was made on that.
And that will come back to you for your final approval.
Will we have a choice?
Yes,
Yeah?
the ultimate choice.
There's really nothing I have to add. Tammy did a great job, other than I'll be happy to answer any question from you or any questions from the public.
So probably this is for Tammy or Mr. Public. Since it expired, did we have to did we renotice it and republish it?
Yes, sir. What's in your packets is an exact replica of what the Planning and Zoning Board received originally. However, because we moved the meeting to tonight for the first public hearing, it has been noticed in the newspaper as required on our website and also out in front in the lobby and outside.
Thank you.
All right. Do I have
Motion to approve?
Second.
Are we going out to the
Okay.
public to hear anything?
Let's
Oh,
have-
yeah, we should go out to the public,
We're
but
going
this
to
would be the
public.
time to do it, yeah.
Let's see who I have signed up here. Do I have anybody? Anyone that's wanted to speak? I don't have any on the PUD. Oh, here we go. Nobody. Back to council.
Can I give you just one brief comment? The action that's being requested of you is to approve the ordinance that's on page 11 of your packet on first reading. This is a public hearing.
Joe, should you do a reading of the ordinance?
Yeah, I was gonna do the reading.
I'm sorry.
At this point. Ordinance number 15-647, an ordinance of the city of Port Richey, Florida, amending the Port Richey zoning atlas on land hereinafter described from multiple family residential R3 zoning category to zoning category planned unit development PUD in accordance with the provisions of section 166.041 Florida statutes, providing for codification, conflict, severability, and an effective date. Cody River Single Family Development.
All right. And I remake my motion to approve at that point.
You-
Second.
Do I have any other discussion?
No.
Let's call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did you vote, Ms. Britton?
Yes,
Okay,
I voted yea.
I vote. That moves us to the third agenda item, which is discussion of draft ordinance, utility rate, category definitions, and I see my old friend.
Sure. As you will see in the packet tonight, is we put some information together. The council has been previously informed by email and pictures regarding my ongoing discussions with Mr. Booth, which have been over the last year and a half. At issue is how Mr. Booth's clients are clarified. What happened is the city attorney and I got together on this and thought it would be best to redefine or clarify the definitions in the utility rate ordinance. Mr. Public has drafted an ordinance. You'll see my suggested alternatives here, just going over them very briefly. You know, we could take no action and continue to bill the parks under the mobile home park category. The council could take action to direct the staff to bill both parks in the RV park category, although that would also affect other parks that are similarly classified that Mr. Booth does not represent and represent a significant revenue loss to the utility system. You could direct us to schedule the attached ordinance for formal consideration by the council, or simply the council could release both of these parks to the Pasco County utility system. They lie outside the city limits of Port Richey, and we are not obligated to serve them because we do not have a utility service territory agreement at this time with Pasco County. You'll see in this a copy of the ordinance, also a spreadsheet prepared by Sal Licari that speaks to the unit cost per each unit at the Jmar Park, and it describes that they typically pay $6.61 for water, up to $10.80 per month. So that's what indeed they are currently being billed at. I know Mr. Booth would like to speak directly to council on this, and I would recommend that. And so this, if indeed you direct us to finalize this ordinance, it would come back to you for first and second reading at upcoming meetings. And just further elaborating on the alternatives, if Jmar and Mr. Booth's other client, I believe it's Oak Springs, do go to Pasco County, that effectively would reduce the amount of bulk water that the city is required to purchase from the city of Newport Richey. So with that, I'll be quiet. We're requesting your direction on this. I'm thinking that I would like to recommend to you that we explore items 3 and 4 as direction, and with that, this matter is at your pleasure.
May I, before Mr. Booth gets up, Mr. Public?
Yes, sir.
Could you look into the utility service territory interlocal agreement? I've been told that we do have one. I don't know.
I
the
will
answer.
double
I'd
check
like to
on that.
know.
My understanding is that it had expired and we just have not negotiated a new one with the county, but I'll get a concrete answer for you.
Mr. Booth?
Yeah, I also wanted to add that Mr. Andy Burnham from Burton and Associates is here in the attendance tonight, and Mr. Burnham is the one that developed on behalf of the city the current rate structure and rate design.
Before we go out, please, could I ask a question? The agenda item is discussion of draft ordinance utility rate category definition, which is essentially, as I understood it, the definitions of what is a mobile home and what is a non-mobile home, or how would you put it? A motor home and a mobile home, is that the definition we're trying to make here?
You are correct.
Okay, so I mean, that is essentially all this ordinance deals with right here?
That's correct.
So that is the only subject we are really dealing with in this agenda item.
Except for you're changing the base rate for.
Well, I'm just saying that's not part of the agenda
changing any
item.
rates.
So we can't change any rates. We can't do any of that stuff here. It's not any,
Mr. Booth,
really, what
please.
we're talking about is development, excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
What we're talking about is development of a draft ordinance. It's not even.
That's correct.
It's not an ordinance.
It's
Okay.
not, this changes no rates.
Right, so
unless-
this is just you looking for guidance for us on whether we want to change the ordinance, or do one of your suggestions here.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there is a question real quick, because as Bill has indicated, yes, that is the case. However, when you indicate the actions going forward, and you're outlining from the staff number 3 and number 4, I would again, I know that everybody's looked at this. Obviously, the number 4, as Tom has indicated, in releasing both parks and his comments about the reduction of the amount of bulk water purchase. You know, that has been outlined here. I know we're just talking about definitions, but it seems to go a little bit further than that when you've got a choice of number 4. So that draws for a little confusion, if you ask me.
Well, if I could just add one thing to that, is that I'm sure that the definitions we're talking about are applying to all mobile homes and motor homes, not just those that are outside of our service area.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, you know, even if we were to say, release them and they wanted to be released, this still has validity since we have.
Oh, yeah, I
you know,
agree.
parks within.
But it draws the conversation out when, you know, we're already quoting the, you know, the term rates. And obviously, we have an expert here in front of us who has also spoke also about some of the legal outlines that fall with this too, as we've talked about before in our agreement some time ago. So there may be some comments there as well. Thank you.
I agree with what you're saying, Steve. Would you like to further confuse us?
Well, for the record, Andrew Burnham, Senior Vice President with Burton and Associates. I don't know that I'll be confusing you, as perhaps maybe just trying to help you understand the choices and consequences that you have. Rate structure that you developed came about as part of a rate study that you did in 2012, 2013 that we had the opportunity to conduct on your behalf. You've carried definitions in your ordinance that have specifically called out RV parks and mobile homes even before our involvement with the community. So you've had these definitions of these different types of customer categories in your ordinances for some time. What's changed over time is how you build these different types of accounts. In some years in the past, it was done based upon meter size, and in other places, and in other instances, for certain customers, it was done based upon the number of units, lots, or spaces. As far as industry practice goes, the trend is really to try and separate out these types of multi-unit residential complexes into their own respective category. If you go back to utility rate making, traditionally there was just pretty much a cutter, a black or white scenario of it was either residential or it was commercial. And if it was a master metered residential complex, it was billed commercial rates. However, over time, the industry gained more data, identified better ways to apportion cost, to recognize that there are really residential uses behind those master meters. So more and more communities are really trying to call out, much like your community did, these types of users separately, to recognize their own unique usage characteristics and to have a rate structure that reflects that, which is why you have base charges that are at different levels per unit or per space for RV parks versus mobile homes or master metered complexes versus what a single family home pays. And that was all based upon a study of your data as part of that rate study.
Okay. Well, for my information, if we have a fixed home, double wide, 1,800 square feet, outside the city, what is the rationale that they pay about 20% of what a person in this city in a regular home pays?
Are you saying that they would be billed the mobile home rates as compared to a single family home?
Well, as opposed to metering each home, which is my preference. What is the rationale of, for instance, Sal's $6 to $10 a unit versus, I don't think anybody here lives in Port Richey ever got a $6 or $8 unit water bill.
Sure. The metering configuration is oftentimes really diverse, not only between communities, but oftentimes even within communities. We've worked with several communities that will have two different mobile home complexes, some that are individually metered and some that are served by a master meter, whereby the property owner then has the responsibility to develop the internal plumbing network to provide water service to each individual space. In that situation, there's typically going to be different in the rates. For example, they would only pay, in that scenario, a master metered community one customer charge,
Right.
because there's only one service connection going to that property, whereas if it was individually metered, each unit would receive a customer service charge. So the metering configuration oftentimes will result in differences in cost apportionment between master metered versus individually metered units of the same type.
If you were making this decision, where would you go with it?
Well, I think the structure that you have in place is probably about as fair and as equitable as you can get. Many communities don't go to the level of detail that you do in terms of specifically calling out RV parks and mobile home parks because many haven't gotten to that level of detail yet. Most will just simply look between residential and non-residential and have a multifamily class, which would all be all-encompassing to mobile homes, manufactured home parks, apartments, condos. They would all be within a single grouping. You've actually taken it a step further to try and differentiate RV parks from mobile homes, and you even looked at the difference, and we did this for you as part of your study, the difference between just normal multifamily apartments and the mobile homes, and determined that their usage characteristics were very similar, which is why they're grouped together as one class. So you've done the analysis of your data to develop the customer classes that reflect the fair and equitable distribution of costs. The structure itself fully complies with all accepted industry practices and would be very defensible from a practitioner standpoint if it were to be legally challenged. So from our perspective, what's in place is fair and equitable, but ultimately the policy decision is yours if you want to change to an alternative structure. Our recommendation would be that you be consistent about it. And that was one of the challenges that you ran into before we were involved with the community, is you had an inconsistent application of how you were billing some of these accounts that were outside the city versus inside. And so my advice to you would be, if you do make changes, and I'll be here to support you through the choices and consequences that you have tonight, is to just be sure it's applied equitably to all customers of a similar type.
So are you saying some cities, just if they're family, they have the same rate in city, out of city, mobile?
Some cities don't even have a multifamily class, and so these
Right.
accounts would be billed as commercial, which would be worse off for these types of customers because your commercial rates are higher than that first-tier residential rate that's intended for residential use. So
Okay.
that wouldn't be, I don't think, a good scenario for this user. Other communities will have just multifamily grouped together as a single class, which is largely what you've done based upon a review of mobile homes versus your multifamily accounts. Their usage characteristics are very similar, so you group them together in a class and carved out a rate structure that's per unit, which is a very accepted and increasing trend within the industry to bill these types of master metered residential properties based upon the number of dwelling units for that readiness charge. And by doing so, you still give them that tiered structure for residential that has a very low rate for those essential domestic uses that are for residential purposes in these communities. So I think your structure is very fair. It's very well founded in industry practice. It's very defensible. Obviously, no rate structure is going to be perfect for all customers, and you're going to have certain customers that may have liked the old structure or alternative structures that might be out there, and that's where you're going to have to make the policy decisions relative to what's going to work best for your community in that regard. And so we made recommendations. The council had extensive discussions with it. Many of you were a part of. Unfortunately, you weren't on the council, Mayor, but I was there several times to work through that decision process, and I know this was an issue that we did talk about.
One last question,
Yes,
or
sir.
how do I look old Tom in the eye and say, well, we sell to this 3-bedroom mobile home, our water at about 20% or about 80% less than what you get? And I don't see how we can look at that as fair and equitable. Maybe I'm not,
Who is you? What type of a user is you in this example?
I'm sorry.
Who is you? I understand.
You,
mobile
that man right there that lives,
Yeah. The mobile home park differential on the base charge, I believe the mobile home parks pay 45% of the base charge that a single-family homeowner does. And that's based upon an analysis of the usage data. We look back over the test year billing data and identified during the maximum months, I think it was March, April, May, the in-season months, looked at the use per unit for single-family homes versus mobile homes. And occupancy ratios, irrigation of larger lots, that's what drove the difference in why single-family homes have a higher base fee than do mobile homes, because they have more usage. And it's based upon your data and a detailed study of that. So that's why there's a difference in the fees between a single-family home.
Order.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
He'll have his chance.
Kind of lost my thought pattern there, but I'm still trying to get okay, mobile homes use less, you're telling me. But I don't think their base structure, from what I've been able to gather, their base structure is around $4. Ours is 23. And I mean, I'm talking, if I turn off my water and I go away, I pay $23.95.
For the base charges.
Right.
And a mobile home should pay about 45% of that number. So it shouldn't be as low as what you're quoting.
Well, you looked at Sal's graph, did any of the council look at the Sal's graph?
Pardon?
Did you take a look at his?
I'm sorry.
graph? Right here, page, I don't know.
Oh, the
Item
one
3.
that Mr. Ficardi put in? I could ask, is sewer included in that, because I don't see that mentioned in the.
It is not in Jmar. I
We
don't
don't
know
serve
about
them.
the other one.
So we don't serve them in sewage?
Yeah,
So are
Jmar's a water-only account.
Okay,
Right.
so how is that being factored in when the dollar amounts we're talking here as far as base charges and such?
Well, as
Or ready to serve and?
Yeah, the
all
ready
that?
to serve differential, if it were water and sewer,
Right.
the per unit charge for each service is 45% of the single-family charge.
Gotcha, okay.
So
Very
it's
good.
the same
Yes.
for each service, if they just have one
Right.
service, we're just talking.
Yeah, and I mean, and this is coming off of the last time we changed the rates, and all the mobile homes were being billed at a bulk rate, and under that particular plan, and it was a ton more money. Now, the idea was that in most of these mobile home parks, people are of a lower income, and they are less usage. They do not use as much as your average homeowner does. So it was trying to be equitable. But again, anything you do is kind of trying to be equitable unless you do what you said, which is individually meter everybody, and that's not really practical.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but what, from your standpoint, what are you, individually metering, what is your standpoint on that applicability?
That would be ideal, but I think you run into some challenges if it's already master metered about who would incur the cost of installing all that infrastructure.
Well, I've been told, just for council's information, and I spend a lot of time on this, that we can buy meters. If we wanted to go that direction, we can buy them with up to 4 years, no interest. So, Mr. Moniz.
I've worked with this a lot in the past. What you have is an existing situation, and to retrofit would be expensive. To install metering, right now, we master meter, it has been master metered. We don't maintain any of the interior plumbing in the park. So if you meter, you're going to be faced with what to do, what to maintain. And, you know, this is just a situation that has existed for a long time. I don't know that the customer has had any interest in individual metering. We certainly wouldn't object to that, but it would be a very expensive proposition if the city tried to fund that. So, you know, once again, if I could help you with just a clarification, the rate structure that has been designed and implemented by Burton and Associates is based on the cost of service, the theoretical cost of service of providing service to each and every user on the city's system, whether it be inside or out. The Florida statutes allow the city to charge 25% more outside the city than inside the city as a return on investment for facilities. So that cost of service analysis that was performed by Burton and Associates is their theoretical analysis on what it takes to serve each kind of customer that we have. Less than that, or any arbitrary decisions to affect that, you know, are providing service at less than the cost, the city's cost to provide service to each customer. So I would urge you to keep that in mind. Nothing's perfect, as Andy has mentioned. We did our best to do a statistical analysis, and he has applied the current rate-making practices that are involved in setting up and implementing rate structures for similar type utility systems. So once again, it's the cost, what they're being assessed at is the cost, the theoretical cost of providing service to the Jmar Park and the other clients that Mr. Booth represents, just as it's the same for a residential customer. Each council member has an individual utility account, and what the charges are, the base charges, are a representation of the costs of providing service to that particular customer classification. The volumetric charges are a different matter. In residential units, there are volumetric charges that are based on a tiered rate structure for conservation purposes. We also built into this, at the direction of council, an affordability component, so that each of you, as you would, I think, readily look at what you get charged, it didn't change that much from prior rates. So we tried our best to be fair. Admittedly, what we've done isn't perfect. I don't think there's a perfect rate structure that exists in any utility system anywhere. So we did the best we could. We relied upon the expertise of Burton and Associates, which is, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, the best rate-making consultant that we had available to us at the time. So I'll shut up on that, and I know at the discretion of the chair, Mr. Booth wants to speak too.
Any other council?
Yeah, I do. I know Mr. Booth is going to speak on this, but I'll just say, look, we had 10 years in the making here. Everyone that sits up here is well aware of what we went through. We called in the expert. You've heard him again. Now, while I realize nothing is perfect, I think in outlining what the staff has in those choices going forward, again, with what Bill has said as well, and why we're covering this topic, you know, again, I'd like to see us start talking about stormwater. We've already talked about this. We've already resolved this. And I think we're ready to move forward. Now, it's not going to be perfect for everybody. But as Tom indicated, when you start throwing some of these other things around and you start talking about greater costs, you're kidding yourself. You're not going to be able to provide that. So, you know, listen, he does this for a living. Obviously, the information that we had then was very good, and it hasn't changed. So, anyway, thank you.
I might just remind you, he said if we were to go to individual metering, if that's possible, that would be the best thing. Mr. Rowe?
Yeah, I'm just waiting to hear from Mr. Booth because I'm still
Okay.
unclear as to where the problem, the contention is here.
Mr. Booth? You are losing weight and looking well, my friend.
Steve Booth, 7510 Ridge Road in Port Richey. I represent 3 RV parks and 1 mobile home park. And some of what I've heard here tonight is totally inconsistent with what I have found. The representation was this is common in the industry, this is what everybody's doing or going towards, et cetera. I have asked repeatedly for an identification of other RV parks that charge a ready-to-serve base rate against the individual lots. Tom, have I ever been provided with that? Are there any?
Andy gave you a letter with regard to his experience on other parks of a similar nature. That's been quite some time ago.
Right, but those were mobile home parks. And the reason those were submitted to us is because you always treated these RV parks as mobile home parks, and they're not. Maybe he can answer the question, and I've asked it a number of times, but I'm not aware of any RV parks that are charged in the same fashion as we're charged in the city of Fort Richard. He can answer that after I'm done, or if he'd like to answer it now. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we have a court stenographer here tonight. It's imperative that council call upon you to speak under general comments. Please do not speak out of turn. Thank you.
Mr. Booth, what is your definition of, I'm sure it's in here, but the drawing line between an RV and a...
Well, as is in the letter that I provided a year ago, by state law, there's a significant difference between an RV and a mobile home. the zoning, and I'll cover the number of different items that will tell you that these two of these, Jmar and Oak Springs, are in fact RV parks, although they've been being billed as mobile home parks. And there's a significant difference in the dollar amounts. In Pasco County, now mind you, these parks are outside of the city limits, but they're in your service area. In the county, they're zoned as RV parks, and they cannot have a mobile home in it, okay? Their license from the state or from the health department identifies the number of units in there as RVs and 0 mobile homes, okay? All of these units have what they call quick connect. If you have a mobile home or a motor home or are familiar with it or whatever, they have quick disconnects that are required. The electrical amp service in a mobile home has to be 100 amps. In a RV or what they call a park model, it's 50 amps. And the standards of the industry and the federal regulations are such that those things can't be mixed. In other words, you can't put 100 amp in a park model, and you can't put a 50 amp in a mobile home, because they can't be interchanged like that. The answers that I got for the primarily, I think, the park models was when Mr. O'Neill and I went out there and looked at them. He said, I don't care what they're classified. When I look at them, they're not readily movable, and therefore I consider them to be mobile homes. Contrary to what the statute says, contrary to the way they're classified in the county, contrary to the state license that we have, contrary to everything. But because he thinks they're not movable, therefore he should identify which ones can be classified as RVs and which ones cannot. Now, what is the distinction as far as the cost is concerned? These two parks individually have been charged a ready-to-serve fee of $3.95 a month times the number of units in there. Your ordinance says that if it is in fact a travel trailer park, a RV park, it's supposed to be charged $2.63. That's a difference of $1.32 for roughly 2.5 years for almost 1,000 units between the two parks that my people have been charged. There was a similar issue that was raised back in 1986, and the circuit court case was Jmar Travel Trailer Park versus the City of New Port Richey. I was not involved in it. I don't know a lot of the background of it, but I'm told that the issues were similar and or the same, and a final judgment was rendered against the city for some $46,000 because of the overcharging. Now, I can't necessarily stand here and say that the issues were exactly the same. My client feels comfortable that they were. Now, I don't understand how we can sit here and say that because they've always been charged as a mobile home park, that that gives the justification to continue doing so when we have pointed out under all the laws applicable here that they are in fact an RV park. The other thing that I find particularly interesting is in your rate study on page 22, here's what it says, and it's being represented that this is fair and equitable. It says, and these are your experts' words, as can be seen from Schedule 2 and Appendix B, about 70% of the single-family bills issued would either decrease or would increase by no more than $4.50. As can be seen from Schedules 5, 6, and 7 in Appendix B, many commercial customers will experience either reductions or only modest increases in their monthly cost as the rate structure recommendations presented herein correct the rate disparities and irregularities that exist within the city. And this is the part that I find fascinating. It says, as can be seen from Schedule 4 in Appendix B, while many of the mobile home and travel trailer parks outside the municipal boundaries will experience increases from the rate structure recommendations presented herein, nearly all of those increases are substantially less than those associated with the new rate structure the city adopted in 2010, that the city later replaced with interim rates pending the results of a study such as this. That rate in 2010, as I understand it, the mobile home park people came and the city, through somewhat of an informal position, did not impose that rate structure. So what this is saying is the justification for charging them more, even though the other categories have experienced a decrease or not too much of an increase, their justification is not that it's fair, not that it's appropriate or whatever, but it's less than what that 2010 ordinance imposed. That's kind of like saying, you know, your brother beats you up 3 times a day and you should feel good because now he's only beating you up twice a day. I mean, that's the only justification in this that I have read. It says, well, it's lower than what that unfair rate was. This is a denial of equal protection because of the fashion that this has imposed upon these groups that are outside of the city. As Mr. O'Neill said, you have the right to charge them up to 25% more. So let me just give you an example, and you tell me if this is fair in what we see. In 2 parks that are owned by Jmar, one in the city and one in the county. Mind you, the county does not charge on a per lot basis. They charge the same way that most every other one that we've been able to find, unless they were an individually owned lot park. In other words, not one owner for the whole park, but each lot was owned separately. Those, I have seen rates where Mr. Burnham would tell you that they have this ready-to-serve fee for those individual lots. But let me just show you the example. I took the 2 parks from Jmar and just picked 1 month. The total water bill from the county for 204,000 gallons, okay? 204,000 gallons. Bill was $926.10. The city water bill for 113,000 gallons, almost half of the gallonage, was $1,973.10 for that month. So you got roughly half the gallonage that you're using and you're paying twice the price. Now, that to me is consistent with what was stated in the report about, yeah, the mobile home or the RV parks are going to pay a little bit more, the mobile home parks are going to pay a little bit more. They're paying an outrageously excessive amount compared to every other bill that I have looked at in the last year or so, year and a half here that we've been doing this. Most, and perhaps Mr. I'm sorry, Andy Burnham, right? Yeah, I'm sorry. Mr. Burnham can address this, but I'm not aware of any RV park, as I stated, and I'm not aware of any mobile home park that is charged the way he's suggesting that is not individually owned lots. Now, maybe he can clarify that, but I can tell you all the ones that I've looked at in Pinellas, in Hillsborough, in Manatee, whether it be city or whether it be county, none of them are treated like this. None of them are treated like this. And that issue is obviously creates a tremendous expense to these people. Now, You can break it down on a per unit basis if you would like, but I find it interesting that if you have a master meter in, let's say, a commercial, office building, you don't individually pay a ready-to-serve fee for each one of those offices within that building. You have a master meter, and you pay for that. That's the way RV parks are treated, and from what I can see, everybody else that has a master meter, that's the way they're billed also. And that's the reason this is so, your cost to my clients is so significant, because they're paying that master meter rate times 398 in one instance and 528 in the other instance. So you multiply that out, I don't understand how that can possibly be justified. The idea that each of these RV parks would just pull out, I think is patently absurd. To my knowledge, there is still in existence the agreement between the county and the city, which was created back in 1987. I've read it again. There is no expiration date on it that I have seen. According to Bruce Kennedy, the head of utilities in Pasco County, there have been some discussions about addressing some of the rate area, some of the service areas. He said for several years, but we've never been able to get anything resolved. He didn't place any blame on the city, and I'm not placing blame on the city for that. But if you look at your map of where that where that service area is, you can see that the lines are kind of squiggly, but they give you a very, very defined area, okay? What's being suggested is, well, we just pull out this little one right here in the middle, and we just pull that one out right there in the middle, and treat them, let them go on their merry way, knowing full well that additional lines would have to be put in to get the service, because the county line is quite a distance away from what I'm told. And do you think the county's going to go along with that? The other thing that is interesting is that in the agreement that was entered into, one of the justifications for working this out was that it made no sense to run parallel lines. Why dig up US 19 again to put in a water line to service these RV parks, dig it up, and let the county do that at considerable expense to the customer, obviously, so that we've got two water lines running parallel down through there. That's one of the things that this ordinance, or this agreement, was designed to prevent. So I think to beat us over the head with a hammer, knowing that it's cost prohibitive, number one, to do it, say, okay, well, we'll just release you and you can go on your merry way. I don't think the county would ever agree just to start pulling these out and have this area here be serviced by the county and this area down here be serviced by the county. That makes absolutely no sense at all. I have done calculations on a number of different parks, a number of different ordinances, and what the difference is, and it's staggering. The charges that the city is imposing versus what the other jurisdictions are charging. The other thing that is interesting is that the rate study talks in terms of rewarding, maintain affordability for low volume and average users to the greatest extent possible. For water conservation and to maintain affordability for low volume and average users. That's part of the objective in what the rate study says. We have months of minimal usage at these parks. I ran the numbers on it where they were actually, each individual unit on an average was using 200 gallons a month. because they're gone. But yet, they're paying that same ready-to-serve fee that every individual property owner, individual single-family home is paying, but they're behind that master meter, so they aren't using the water during those months. And there are a number of reasons like that that show me that the amount of money that my clients are having to pay to the city is just unconscionable compared to every place else in the state, in the county, and it's not justified. And I have spent a year and a half, I've met with Mr. O'Neill, what, 7, 8 times?
Seems like more than that.
It seems like more than that to me also. In an effort to come to some type of a reasonable solution to this thing without going back to have to deal with this in some other forum. It's just not right, and there is no way that you can go and write an ordinance, in my opinion, my humble opinion, to start defining an RV park just so you can shove us up into that category or treat us as a mobile home park, as it's been expressed, is what they want to do to us. Because an RV is an RV based on all these other factors that I've identified, and I don't care if you create your own definition, just to get us inside of those rates. It's not right, and it's improper, it's a denial of due process, and this whole application is a denial of equal protection of the laws. I think the letter that I wrote to Mr. O'Neill in December of 14 identifies, and I think it's in your packet, is it not, Tom? I brought copies for everybody, but I think it's in the packet.
I would invite you to distribute them through the clerk.
Okay. I'll do that. I think they're in there. And that identifies just a few of the reasons that we are clearly RV park instead of a mobile home park. And I'd like to ask Mr. Pavlik or Mr. O'Neill. I was not aware that this city-county agreement didn't exist anymore. I don't see any expiration in it. Are you aware of how it got terminated? Because like I say, everybody else thinks it still exists, but.
Well, through my discussions with the county, the understanding was there that it was expired, and we were trying to renegotiate a new one, and we have not got to that point yet.
Okay.
And may I offer you some, through my discussions with one of the prior city attorneys, there isn't an expiration date, and it is in effect.
Okay. That's what I understood. I had a brief conversation with, as I say, with Mr. Kennedy. He never indicated to me that it was expired. He did indicate to me that there have been some discussions about perhaps some area swaps and things like that, which would lead me to believe that they still believe you have this franchise area in place. But even if it isn't, does it make sense to, because if you don't like what we're proposing, that okay, we can leave, and so we run these parallel lines down US 19, dig up the highway again to put in a parallel line, bypass a whole bunch of your customers just to serve one that's further down the road? It just makes no sense at all.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm just very confused because when I went up to Jmar and I went through that park, I saw a lot of this, okay, these things.
Those are park models. Those
Well,
are park models.
They have skirting on that's attached.
This pulls right off.
And what about the screen rooms that are attached to them? They don't go up US 19.
Clearly they don't, but they come off.
Well, anyway, this is what if I was seeing an advertisement in a newspaper, I would look and go, well, that's a mobile home, and then down here, that's definitely an RV. But I came to the same conclusion when I went up there that this is not truly an RV park.
Well, look at the definitions.
I
Look at
understand,
what
but
they're
I'm just-
allowed to have, both by the state and by the county, and what they have to be. They have to be in compliance. You look at those definitions and they comply. Now, it makes no sense, with due respect, for somebody to say, okay, well, I don't think that's an RV, so I'm gonna bill you as a mobile home, without ever looking at what the law says is important.
If that were the case, then the mobile home park across the street, we should be billing as an RV park. I mean, that's essentially what you're telling me.
No, it isn't. Those are totally different. Those are built to different standards. Those are what they call the ANSI standards, are required for RVs.
Do you know who
Totally different standards than what the mobile homes are constructed.
Do you know who manufactures these types of homes?
Different manufacturers. I don't know what else to say.
I'd like to know, because that would tell me, you know, by going to the manufacturer and talking to the manufacturer and saying, what kind of properties do you build? What would you consider this?
Absolutely. Well, check with any of them. I can give you the names of some of the manufacturers. I can get that, but you
No, that's
will.
okay, I'll run up there and look, because, you know, to me, I'm just, you know, from just being alive for as many years as I have, this looks to me like a mobile home, and this is definitely an RV.
Well,
So I understand your point, and that's why I'll investigate it.
Okay.
Anyone else before I go?
Yes. And thank you. I think that brings a lot of points up, and certainly points for discussion. And I'm glad we have Burton here. I think he can address some of this. I do understand the $1.32 differential. I would like to hear more from Joe regarding the 1986 Circuit Court case of what is said to be a similar issue. The justification that you spoke of regarding the post-2010 and cost differentials. But if we can get the Burton Associate in reflecting a little bit on this, because one thing that's noted in here in that analysis is the rate categories based on the concept of permanency of the individual park sites, and that's referenced here as well. I'd also like to hear from Tom along this discussion, because again, you bring some good points, and I understand that, in the cost of providing service. Because as you've mentioned, here we are, the council left with two choices that don't seem very fitting as per your argument. And when we look at the number 3 and number 4, as you've indicated, we certainly need to hear, I think, a little bit more from these folks.
But I would say that those aren't necessarily the only choices.
Right.
I mean, you know, those are the ones that are being suggested by Mr. O'Neill, but that doesn't mean that either one of those is acceptable to us.
Right.
You know, is it fair to use a city definition of what an RV is that flies in the face of everything else that is recognized statewide? And quite frankly, I think state law would trump it. I think you're on a very slippery slope if you just say, well, we'll define it any way we want to define it, so that it comports with what Tom O'Neill's opinion is as to whether that's an RV or a mobile home park.
This is where I think it comes into Burton, because when this was gone through for a long period of time, you know, a fair, equitable approach in looking at regard to the 25% figure, et cetera. We spent a lot of time, I think as you recall, we had Harbor Point people here, we had rates going up and different things.
I wasn't involved, and I don't really know.
Right.
But what I will tell you is that what was provided to me as, okay, these are examples of where other places have charged this, every one of them was a mobile home park. It wasn't an RV park, and I don't think anybody was trying to deceive me. I think what has happened is these RV parks have always been in that classification in the city, and nobody looked at the difference between an RV park and a mobile home park. And we talked about changing the definition. At least in the ordinance that was provided to me that identifies all the rates, there is no definition. Is there a definition in the city somewhere else that I'm not aware of?
Steve, do you have a definition that's universal?
Yeah, it's under the state statute. Been provided.
Is it
I can
here?
cite you to one of the code sections, or the code sections here.
I have a question as
So,
to-
please.
It's on the back of the letter that is handed out to you. It's one of the exhibits that I attached. Now, is there a definition in the city ordinance of what an RV is? So we're not changing for clarification purposes, apparently. We're just creating a new definition to shove my people into that so that, to justify what they've been being charged. That's what it sounds like, with due respect to.
Steve, I haven't seen you this passionate in years, but I haven't been here in years. Did Sal give you this price per unit that you're paying that I'm looking at?
Did what?
I'm looking at what J-Mar pays. Do you have that?
Yes, he does. Yeah, I probably have that somewhere. I didn't have it for my presentation, it may be in the rest of my file.
It isn't very good for your presentation. How can you look at the most that J-Mar has paid in this from November to April? The most per month is $10.80. I can't find that
$10.80 for
ain't
what?
onerous.
For what?
That is per unit. That's 730,000 gallons. Total monthly bill of $4,300.
I assume that the numbers are correct. I'd have to run a tape on it to be certain. But what difference does it make what they pay per unit? What difference does that make? The question is, what are they classified as, and why would we do it any differently than all the rest of the jurisdictions? For instance, Pasco County, you pay a flat rate in travel trailer parks of, I don't know, $380, I think it was, or something like that, total. And what we're paying is on a per unit basis of what we've been being charged is $3.95 a unit. In the county and in Dade City and in Pinellas and all the parks down there, they charge that flat fee for the ready to serve. But here, we're charged on a per unit basis. And the cost over several years is monumental. And that's why I'm here. That's why she's here. It's a problem that has to be addressed because it's patently unfair and it's not being and your own ordinance is not being applied properly, illegally, I would submit.
I have a quick question, please.
Wait. Go ahead, just wait for me to.
Apparently J-Mar had an issue with Newport Richie and won a court case years ago, okay?
No,
Because
Port
it's-
Richie.
Huh?
Port Richie, not Newport Richie.
Oh, okay, well, you said Newport Richie earlier.
I'm sorry,
so-
then I was mistaken.
That's
It's
okay,
Port
but-
Richie.
But, okay, so they had an issue years ago, okay? And the city had to settle for $46,000. My question is, all those years went by, they had no questions. Now all of a sudden we raised the rate and they're all over the rates. I mean, for all these years, they were fine with what we were doing, and now we changed the rate structure.
I don't think, and I could be wrong, and maybe Mr. Burnham can answer this, but I don't think under your prior rate schedule that there was a differentiation between mobile homes and RVs. And that may be why all these years they've been charged as a mobile home park, when they're not. So your new ordinance comes along and it differentiates between them, gives a lower rate to RVs, but yet continues to charge my clients as mobile home park, which is that $1.32 differential times almost 1,000 units times 2.5 years. And that was the judgment that the J-Mar got against the city for that $46,000.
Is J-Mar licensed for any permanent properties?
Are they licensed for mobile homes? No.
Are they licensed for permanent properties, I'm asking?
Well, what is permanent property?
Well, like, you
I don't know
one
what
of
that,
these- One of these types of.
those under state law are RVs.
Right, I'm just wondering, do they live there year round?
Huh?
Do they live there year round?
They can. They can.
so
I would
right.
assume some of them may and some of them may not. I don't know. But we shouldn't try to reinvent how we apply these things when it's already been discussed and put down in statutory form, and feel as though we have the right here in the city to define them differently than everybody else does and what state law does. I would request an opportunity, I don't know what Mr. Burnham has to say, but I would request at least maybe 3 minutes to respond to his comment.
May I ask you one last question?
Sure.
I'm with Nancy. How long do you think it would take to make that thing mobile?
Within a matter of hours, I'm told. Because understand that the electric you unplug, the water you unhook, and the skirts just clip off, they come off.
And the permastone around the entire base?
I mean, how long would it take you to knock that stuff down?
But that being said, how long does it take to move this? 2 minutes.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, that being said, how long does it take to move something like this? 2 minutes.
Well, that's an RV, and we're just gonna have to disagree on that. Go ahead, would you like to
Thank you.
answer Mr. Booth's question?
Could you clarify too, the 1986 case, was that Port Ritchie or
Yes.
Newport
It was
Ritchie?
It was Port Ritchie.
1986.
Yes.
Okay, one other thing.
Yeah, he confirmed that I said Newport Richie, I apologize.
Okay.
It was in fact Port Richie, and it is in your packet.
Right. Okay,
Isn't it, Tom, I think?
Yep.
No, that's not in the packet.
Okay, maybe if we could get some copies. Now, I will tell you one thing, excuse me just a second. Unfortunately, the clerk's office has purged the file. And so we can't seem to find the background of, what went into this whole thing. I'm sure that Joe would be checking that, and I'll just tell you.
I've already checked on that a long time ago.
Isn't that what they said?
Confirmed, there's nothing
Yeah.
at the clerk's office.
And the attorney who handled it, Mr. Figursky, for Jamar, he purged his files too, which you can understand from a 1986 case. If it's not, it is or it is not in the packet.
No, it's not in the
Maybe
packet.
we could get some
Mr.
copies.
Booth, I've got a copy of it in electronic form, and I'll email it to
Okay.
everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Booth, one other thing I'd like to point out, please, if I could, is that the definition that you're quoting of travel trailer here that we have in this letter that you distributed is specifically under definitions, motor vehicle licenses, motor vehicles.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's defining a travel trailer as it applies to licensing and usage on the road. This is from like a road standpoint. It's not an overall definition that I can see that's applying to it generally in any other way. So I agree, I can see that here you are, it's a piece of statute here, and it does give a definition of a travel trailer, but given where it is in state statute, I'm not necessarily sure that's the overriding factor right here.
Well, that's certainly something that I could discuss with Mr. Public, and I think there are some other sections that deal with it, but I would find it difficult to believe that it would be defined in one way in that statute would be defined any differently and applied differently in any other statute.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Sure. I don't mind holding it either, if that would help too. Okay, I tried to take rather copious notes from Mr. Booth's comments, and so maybe I should just start by some of my responses to those questions. I think Mr. Booth disputes that RV parks are charged per unit, per lot, or per space. Yeah, I believe Mr. Booth disputes the fact that RV parks are charged in other communities on a per lot or per space basis. I believe one of the references we sent to him that also Mr. Public is familiar with, Zephyr Hills, does apply their rate structure to RVs on a per unit or per space basis. I also know that for many communities, the definitions of rate categories tend to be very general and less specific than what you have, as I've talked about previously. So it's entirely possible that where they talk about mobile home parks, while they may be silent about RV parks, it's not an omission, it's just simply not a specific reference, and that they may be in fact including RV parks within how they charge mobile home parks. That would take a fair amount of analysis and questions. Not as many communities have a high number of RV parks as they do mobile home parks. So you'll probably find that many communities haven't had to address this particular and unique issue. The fact that other communities don't necessarily charge this specifically and this granularly doesn't make the practice inequitable or unfair, which of those are the statutory requirements that you have to comply with, is having a fair and equitable rate structure.
May I? Is it necessary for us in our billing to define mobile home, RV, or just dwelling?
This, again, is something that is unique to each community and dovetails into the second point about the references to state statutes and what constitutes, by definition, in this case, in the motor vehicle license section, an RV versus a travel trailer. Many communities have to look to multiple data points in terms of how they classify customers within their billing system and their rate structure. As with rate structures, most definitions are not perfectly precise, and some interpretation is required about what customer class a particular property is best suited for. So many communities don't have perfectly described rate classes, and they constantly have to go back, and I shouldn't say constantly, but periodically go back and amend those as conditions arise to make sure that they're capturing the unique nature of the properties within their communities. So that is not an uncommon practice. I will say this, in terms of the customer classification process, one of the challenges that many communities face is that your utility billing system has different data input into it and maintained than what necessarily the property appraiser and tax collector may have relative to the zoning of a parcel, its specific Department of Revenue's property use type, and you don't necessarily know in your utility billing system what parcel is attached to which utility billing system account, because you may have multiple accounts on a single parcel. So that is one of the reasons why many utility systems, and it's a very common industry practice, look to grouping customer classes based upon their usage characteristics. That's why these are user fees. You're looking for commonality in terms of user characteristics, whether it's the ultimate use type, being residential versus non-residential, irrigation, separate from those types of uses. And within those, different levels of granularity based upon, is it a single-family dwelling? Is it a multi-family dwelling? Because again, there's drivers that would cause them to use water differently and place different demands on the system.
Would not this 1 meter system encourage people to use more water?
Well, I don't know that it would encourage it. I think what you would see is
They're
more.
not seeing a water bill. They see whatever they pay per month, the owner pays the water bill.
Yeah, I think what would happen is in that scenario with that increased transparency and the more direct assignment of costs, that those customers would probably be more aware of how much water they're using and likely try and use less to save money. That's typically been our experience, that the more information customers have about their bill and their water use, the more they try to control that for their simple bottom line objectives.
My understanding, and Mr. Booth can correct me, is that we have a multimeter into JMAR, 1 meter, right? The occupants pay one fee. The owner pays the water fee. Is that correct?
Well, every community that's master metered is going to be different, and it's going to be up to the property owner about how they charge their customers. They may just roll the cost of electricity, water, and sewer into a per space rental fee, so customers may never actually see a water cost in terms of what they pay.
And that brings my point is, if they don't see a water bill, what the incentive to save water is the money you save. They don't see a water bill, and I don't believe they do.
That's correct. And I think I was saying that. I may have misheard your initial comments about they would use more water. I think they would, in fact, conserve more and use less if they had a better understanding of their water bill and their water usage.
A brief comment. They are master metered, and that's because that's the way that they wanted it, and the city accepted it at that time. All of the property within the park is private. And I don't want to underestimate for you the cost of providing for individual meters for the number of sites that exist at JMAR. If we had it all to do over again, there's nothing wrong with having a park being individually metered. We certainly wouldn't have objected to that from day one. It was master metered because that was what was put in by both parties. I don't know that there would be any conservation that would be realized by individual metering because the grounds are commonly maintained. And so the park owners maintain the grounds, they maintain their pool and other amenities on the site. So I don't know that there would be any conservation realized on the site. That's kind of hard to say, but that's the reason that it all occurred in the fashion that it did.
Well, and again, I would add to that if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
You know, the idea here was that the rates on that first rate hike were overly high on the mobile home parks and the travel trailer parks. I mean, we felt that. That's why we felt we had to do something about it. There's just so many.
Do that first sentence. I missed.
I was just saying, there was an inequity in our first rate structure increase, the one before the one we did with Burton and Associates, that did cause a lot of excess expenses to the mobile home parks and the motorhome parks based on the forgiveness they were granted until we came up with a new structure. The idea has always been is that when the rates went up so high in the first place, the complaints we got back, justifiably so, was that the owners had to pass those higher rates along to their, the people in their park because it's master metered. So we tried to come up with a structure where instead of being master metered and being billed at the highest water rate there is, to assign basically values to each of the properties in there and then be able to bill at the lower tiered residential rates, which would allow the mobile home parks not have to pass excessive expenses along to their residents.
Okay, excuse me for being behind the times, but aren't the rates where they're paying less than our lowest city home rate?
If you put it on a per unit basis, I guess that would be the case, yes, I'm agreeing with you, yeah.
So,
That's why I'm not sure,
invisible. Okay, go ahead.
And if I may, Commissioner Colombo, that's a very good segue into the next point about the basis of the rate structure. The 2010 study that was done by SERCAP, that resulted in, at the time, billing these types of mobile or master metered complexes based upon the number of dwelling units. And at the time, there was pushback from some of the users, and the city at the time then made adjustments for those outside municipal users to go back to the prior structure that was billing those readiness to serve charges based upon meter size. But the customer classifications from our study did not add to or create new classes, and I wanted to clarify that for Mr. Booth, that we did not do that.
Hold you at that point. I'd like the public to get to speak before they go to sleep. And then both of you will have an idea of what our problems are. I have first the Reverend Sandy Spalding.
Sandra Spalding, 8207 Old Post Road. Okay, the RVs. Are they here more than 6 months and 1 day? If they are, then they're residents. If they aren't, they're tourists. Are they paying tourist tax? I don't know. Okay? We're worrying about charging RVs, mobiles, resident homes. Why don't we change the ordinance and have it residents and non-residents? If you're here less than 6 months, it's one fee. If you're here more than 6 months and 1 day, you're a resident. It's another fee. And then who cares what kind of parks we got? All right? Think about it. Either you're a resident or you're not. And why should me as a resident, one person, have to pay $18 basic for water when the mobile home park has to pay $6 for one person or two? No, if you're a resident, we all pay the same. If you're not, and if you're a tourist, you're charged accordingly. And it's easy. These RV parks and mobile home parks, if they're not there 6 months and 1 day, they're a tourist. Believe me when I tell you. I had a mobile home park. I'm gonna leave you with that, thank you.
I also have Ron Padova. Ron, that's why I tried to stop it early. Judy Breezy gone also?
Yep.
Yes.
Do I have anybody else that would like to speak?
Mr. Brown.
Brown?
Thomas Brown, 7436 Candlelight Court. If an RV has to maintain a current license plate at all times and a mobile home does not, wouldn't that tell you which is a mobile home and which is an RV?
Very good question.
I think
I
both
should
do.
do that.
I think they both do. I think they both do too.
Mr. King?
If you got a mobile home, you gotta get licensed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
State your
Problem
name
seems,
and address.
7749 Pier Road. I'm sorry, John King, K-I-N-G. Problem seems that we have various definitions. I talked to Mr. Hernandez in the county today. I asked him, what are your rates for mobile home parks, RV parks, mixed-use parks? He came back with, it's all the same. Everybody pays the same. Bulk water rates in the county. I don't care what your business is. If you're a bulk water user, you pay the same rate as everybody else. And I think we should go that way instead of having this for him, this for that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other citizens? Mr. Booth, or, well, why don't you resume?
I have more if the council's interested to hear it. The point made relative to the reference in the report to page 22, talking about the impacts to the travel trailers and mobile home parks. I do have to take issue with the characterization that the customer impacts that were discussed as referenced were the basis for, or the justification for the rate structure changes. That was in fact not the case. That was a description to the types of customer impacts that were resulting from the rate structure that we recommended, that was based upon an analysis of the data and usage characteristics of the customers. So that was not a basis for the rate structure. That was merely a reference and description of the customer impacts and trying to place them into the proper context. One important point that I would like to make everyone aware of is that cost comparisons relative to the county, while they're also going to be very important because they give you an idea of what local rates are, we also have to understand they're much different systems. And the county has a tremendous economies of scale over the city of Port Richey in terms of a much larger customer base upon which it can spread its costs. And if you look categorically back through the rate study, and even at the current rates, really for all types of users, your rates are higher than the county's, and I think largely that stems for that very reason. Related to that point, I want to also make sure that the public is aware, and particularly Mr. Booth, that that rate structure change that happened in 2013 wasn't just rate structure. The water system had substantial water quality issues at the time that necessitated greater purchases of water from Newport Richey. The water system needed a 26.75% increase in rates at that time. So all other things being equal, if there were no rate structure changes made, every user, whether it was single family, whether it was a mobile home, whether it was a business, could have otherwise expected to see at least a 26.75% increase in their rates, just to meet the system requirements at the time.
That was in what year?
That was for the adjustments effective, I believe, on or about August 1st of 2013. That's when the new rate structure went into place, and they embodied that level of additional revenue to meet the system cost requirements.
Point. Very important point.
Just as one other point, as Mr. King brought up a moment ago, the county would charge it at a bulk rate. Are any of these mobile homes and parks, in your knowledge, would they pay less if we charge them just a straight bulk rate?
Well, I don't know that you have a bulk rate available. I think
Or a commercial rate.
Yeah, there you go. So the simplistic option would be to revert back to just simply having, if it's single family and individually metered residential, it's residential, and anything else falls into the commercial or non-residential category. In that case, the readiness to serve fee would be based on the meter size.
Right.
But the usage rates would now be the uniform rate. There wouldn't be the inclining block rate, because that's not something that's typically applied to non-residential users. So that rate per thousand, I haven't had a chance to run that cost analysis based upon their current usage data. You know, at a high level, I think it may end up being more at these higher levels of
Well, that
volumes
was
we're
our
seeing.
impression, you know.
Yeah. You know, I can't stand here and tell you it will be more, but I suspect it would likely be more.
Well, I'd like to see those numbers, you know, if we could get them. But again,
Absolutely.
the only reason we ever went to this ready to serve and this tiered rate structure was in fact to save money for the mobile home parks.
Yeah, it's the usage rate differential, because all of their use, it's scaled based upon the number of units.
Right, and they'd be billed
So
at the-
almost all of their use falls into tier 1, which is significantly lower than the uniform commercial rate. So
Right.
I suspect they would be paying more.
Would-
but, you know, I would want to run the numbers to verify that, or Sal could do that too.
Would it be a big task to crunch those numbers?
No, it wouldn't. I mean, I could do it, or Sal could. It's not a
The
tremendous
council,
exercise, so.
would they like to see that? Would you like to see
I would like to see it, yes. Since that's the original intention, as far as I was concerned, with coming up with what we're talking about right now, with the ready to serve fee and all that.
Is the question, just to clarify so that we do it correctly, is the question that you would like to see what they would pay if they were under the commercial rate category?
Today's commercial rate category.
Today's commercial rate category.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And/or individual meter?
Yeah, and
I would
again,
like to see it.
I'd love to see it too, but I gotta say, I think it would be an extraordinarily expensive project. It really would.
And as I,
We still can do that pretty easy to provide you that calculation.
Okay, cool.
I was
Yeah,
I'm
cool.
under understanding that we can finance at zero rate for 48 months. I am under the impression that we can finance the water meter at a 0% for 48 months. I don't know.
Well, not to beat the horse down any further, because we'll hear from the Mr. Booth, but in looking at the $1.32 differential, which was what's outlined, and basically at the heart of this issue, going along with, as this gentleman indicated, you know, the cost of service. And you've outlined the differential there as well. So if there's going to be a balance, and I think that's what Mr. Booth indicated, that's what makes this difficult in taking all these into consideration. The one greater issue of cost of service, as you've represented with economies of scale, is a much different elephant in the room, if you ask me.
It certainly is. And I have two smaller and quick points that I think will
Yes,
take
sir.
care of not only Mr. Booth, but a couple of the public's comments as well, if I may.
Hmm.
One of the items that Mr. Booth pointed out was that during certain months of the year, Jamar Park and I think Oak Springs presumably use very low amounts of water. Well, unfortunately, during those months, you can't uninstall your unused system capacity. And You've incurred that investment and sized it such that you can meet their peak demands when they incur. That's exactly the intent of why readiness to serve charges are done. And the drivers of these types of properties' demands, those peak demands, are those numbers of units and when they're populated. So the readiness to serve structure really tries to relate a very good relationship between the drivers of that peak demand and ensuring you have a way to recover those fixed costs when those users aren't here. And the final point that I'd like to make relative to that exact issue is that one of the key considerations you have with utility rates is they have to be done with an understanding of the cost of service, and then that's the large determining factor as to whether or not they're fair and equitable. If we started to look at other non-demand driver or non-usage characteristics, like if they were here for a certain part of the year or not, you're going to run into, I think pretty quickly, some legal challenges and substantial risk about the defensibility of your rate structure, because for user fees like utility rates, they have to have a nexus to that cost of service. So I just caution you there about looking at non-usage related or non-demand driver characteristics as part of setting your rate structure policies and programs. So I just wanted to caution you on that point. And on the third point, unfortunately, I'm not in a position where I can help clarify the utility service agreement with the county. I'm not very knowledgeable about that, but you know, it sounds like you may have some knowledge about that.
So you'll report back to us at the next meeting, or is that? City managers?
Well, what we can do is develop a calculation. Andy will work with me and Sal Akari, and we'll develop a calculation. I'll distribute it to everybody, and then you can tell me what you wish to do.
Okay. Mr. Booth, would you like to wrap this up?
It's interesting that the only city that apparently Mr. Burnham is aware of that charges the way Port Richey is charging is the city of Zephyr Hills. And perhaps Joe can comment on this, but in the last year, there's an article in the paper that says Zephyr Hills plans to correct water billing inequity. And it's the same issue that we're talking about here. But there's no other RV park that I'm aware of, and I didn't hear him mention any others, that does it the way Port Richey is doing it. Now, if this is a trend, if this is the way that we balance these costs and everything, why hasn't everybody else done that? I mean, I read you the difference in the costs between Jmar in the city and Jmar in the county. $1,000 a month difference. And it all goes back to that ready-to-serve fee. I'm not aware of any mobile home park, as I said earlier, that is not, where the lots are not individually owned, that does that either. These are parks, and this would apply to Senate Manor also. It's a park. They aren't individually owned lots. And if these things, these costs and approach to this thing is justified, I find it difficult to believe that nobody else is looking at it. In the county, they're billed on a monthly basis for that ready-to-serve fee for the master meter. And it is based upon the size of the meter. That's the way everything that I've seen is the way they function. And I would again remind you that I've checked at least 12 to 15 other municipalities and counties, and none of them do it this way that I have seen. The other thing is, you know, it's one thing for the city to want to do what's equitable when you need to balance your budget, so to speak. And I certainly have detected, and I think that is the case, that y'all were losing money and we got to figure out how to do this. And maybe it wasn't the justification, as Mr. Burnham stated, but clearly that statement in his own report said everybody else is going down or just a little bit of an increase, but what it stated about the mobile home parks and the RV parks is, well, at least it's less than the 2010 ordinance, which apparently everybody realized was totally inequitable. And I don't think that's a proper justification, that what we did before was really, really unfair, so now we'll just do something that's a little bit unfair. I don't think that's a proper justification, and I would request that you let us decide this thing reasonably and quickly, as opposed to, you know, having to take some other alternative. Because I think you can see where even if you came up with a new definition and it passed court muster, for the last 2.5 years, under your own definitions, there aren't any definitions apparently in your city of RVs, that your ordinance specifically identifies a difference in terms of what's to be charged, but yet two of my clients were treated as mobile home parks when they are in fact RV parks. And I think that you can't just pick out your own definition and make it applicable. I appreciate your willingness to at least look into this further. And I'm available to discuss it for the 9th or 12th or 15th time with Mr. O'Neill.
Okay, Steve.
I'll just say real quick, you know, we were outlined with 4 choices. Nothing seems, at this point, very fitting. I think what Mr. Booth has indicated is there should be a choice 5 on here. Maybe that's another process with Tom quickly to try to find some medium ground point. I would think. I'm just speaking for myself, but
Okay, let's
you
go
know,
around
I'm
and
not
get
very
a-
comfortable with choice 3 and 4 at this
No, I'm
particular
not
point.
with any of them. Bill?
Yeah, I'd like to see those figures that I asked for. I do believe, I'm not sure even right now, after all this discussion, exactly what the Mobile Homes Park wants. I assume they want us to just drop the ready-to-serve fee, or just give them the bulk ready-to-serve fee and keep the water going at the same methodology we're using right now. I'm not sure at that point.
Not sure I understand it all. Mr. Rowe?
A lot of details here, but, it talks about, as we talk about statutes and those kind of legal things, I need definition before I can go anywhere with any of this. But I will say, as far as other cities, other communities that keep hearing this, and I've heard this discussion up here before on a myriad of topics, and everybody says, well, this city's doing this, and this city's doing this. I don't care what those cities are doing. I can no more run this city differently than I'd run my home, because no one down the street can tell me what I need to maintain and run my home. And other cities, while they can be used as a comparison or some kind of guidance as a spectrum, the dynamics that face us in our water department and the age of our lines and the needs and requirements it's going to take to supply that water to those places can be totally different than they are in a different city, in a different circumstance. There's just, I can't compare these things, and I don't think anybody should. So with that being said, I would really like to know, because I agree with Councilman Colombo on this, is I'm looking at motor vehicle licenses here. I'd like to know how the statutes, or if there is a statute, would mandate us to follow these definitions in the sale of our water. Is it going to carry over? Is this something that's going to be a legal thing that's going to overlap into our sale of water? Those are the things we're going to need to look at. I see the difference in RVs, mobile homes and all that, but they all have wheels under them. And to me, that's a common denominator. You got axles under there, which means they can move. Recreational vehicles may be a little different because they're easier to move maybe, but mobile homes can be moved within a number of hours too.
The pit crew.
I think for the purpose of licensing, I can see why they'd want to kind of nitpick these differences, but I'd like to know where we stand with statutes from a legal basis, so we can make a decision on where we go and how we word this thing, because right now I'm very confused as to, with the legalities of this, where we stand.
Mr. Poplick?
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Spalding brought up something about a resident paying a tourist fee versus if they're 6 months and a day here, they're a resident. If they're not, they're supposed to pay a tourist fee. Is that what you said, Ms. Paul?
May I get up?
Please.
Explain it?
Yeah, council will have that.
Okay. I have a small condo in Daytona Beach Shores. The tourist tax went in. If I rent my condo for 6 months and 1 day, they don't have to pay a tourist tax. If I rent it for a week, a month, up to 6 months, they have to pay a tourist tax.
What is that?
Now, that's a tax Florida put in for tourists,
I
if
mean,
they're not residents.
What does that amount to?
I don't know
Do you
what,
remember?
what the percentage is, because they pay it at the managing company for me, but what I'm trying to say is, if you're a resident, you're here 6 months and 1 day, you give at least, they don't count you as a tourist. So the RVs, if they're parked there without moving for more than 6 months, they are a resident, they're not tourists. So take that into consideration. Yeah, they have wheels and they could go, that means nothing. Half the time those wheels are flat. I had a small mobile home park years ago. Our water came in with 1 meter, and I had to pay commercial. It was in Newport Richey. Well, actually, it was in the county, but I had Newport Richey water. And I had to pay commercial rates. And they said to me then, if you want to change that, you pay for every one of your mobiles to have a meter put on. And at that time, it was like $500-600 a meter. And I had 21 units. They weren't going to pay. The city of Newport Richey wasn't going to pay. I would have to have paid that if I wanted to do that. Take that into consideration too. Our city doesn't have to pay for that. Do I see a smile there? True what I'm saying?
Thank you.
Okay? So there's different ways that you could charge that rate, if they're a resident or if they're a tourist. Tourists might have to pay a little bit more. Tourists pay tourist tax to Florida. Residents have the same thing that all of us residents pay. Hello,
Thank you.
thank you.
I'll just be very brief, and there is no way under any concept of residency that what's being suggested could be done. Because a lot of people have residency here, and they may only live here 3 months of the year, or 4 months of the year, and vice versa. And that's recognized under the Constitution. There's just no way that could be done. I think on definitions, to answer your question, I may have attached the wrong one after you pointed out, Mr. Colombo, that it was licenses. I'll cite Joe to the statute, which gives the definitions I believe would be applicable. That's section 513.01. It's just the definitions. It does in fact give a definition of the park model. They call it a park trailer. It has square footage requirements. It has the ANSI standards, which I mentioned earlier. It gives a number of things that the park models do in fact comply with. Then the rest of that statute, 513, talks about what goes where, but the definitions are in 513.01, and I apologize for
Thanks,
attaching
Dave.
the wrong one.
All right,
Thank
guys,
you.
if you don't mind, I'm gonna sum it up real quickly. Mr. Booth says, nobody does it like us. Maybe we're forward-thinking. And seriously, water is the new oil. $1,000 between J-Mar and J-Mar outside, J-Mar inside, Port Richey. $1,000 between the two over, remember, this is 398 people. What is that, $2.50 a piece? So, that all said, I think we all want more information.
Yes.
If anybody has any other things to say, I just hope you will give me that motion.
Motion to table until we get more information.
Well, okay. Second.
Well, you got a consensus, that's all you need.
Yeah, you really, all you need is a consensus.
All in favor?
Yeah, so it's all in favor, so.
Aye.
He was looking for a motion to adjourn.
That's what I thought he was looking for.
No, that's finally motion to table.
We've got one
We
more
were
thing
gonna
to
do that.
cover.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Well, it'll come
All
back
in favor
quick.
of the table?
Aye.
Aye.
It's gonna come back quick.
Yeah.
I've asked there to be some speed to this.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
We got that one. Other motion.
Now you want a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
that's the one I'm
So
looking.
second
Oh, we
that
got
one.
one thing left, don't we, with the boards and committees?
I'm sorry.
You got
That's
agenda
not-
item number 4? No?
It's not
Okay.
there.
No, because we knew that this was going to be a lengthy topic.
Okay, it's in mine.
Okay.
I'm glad to adjourn. Be up at 4:30 in the morning.
Yep.
Thank you.
Do
All
I-
done.
Do I have the motion that?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to
All in favor?
Aye, 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 aye.
I think you did a good job. I think you.
How are you? I figured you were here somewhere. My shoulder kind of, so.
Yes, and I sent you one back. I sent you.